What would you do if your entire family, reliant on your grandfather's wealth, turned their backs on you only to learn too late that the life you built without their help was the real success? Evelyn Walker had spent years building her own career, financial independence, and dignity, while her family's lavish lifestyle relied entirely on her grandfather's support. When her sister Tiffany intentionally excluded her from the family Thanksgiving reservation, Evelyn calmly walked away, deciding enough was enough. Stay tuned to see how Evelyn's independence reshapes her family's fragile reality, and don't forget to subscribe for more eye-opening stories. On Thanksgiving morning, as I woke up in my Chicago apartment, a familiar anxiety crept into my chest. Another year, another family reunion. This year's gathering place was the Breakers, a luxury resort hotel in Palm Beach, Florida, our annual family trip, all expenses covered by my grandfather. As I did my final check of my suitcase, I let out a deep sigh. Staring at my reflection in the mirror, I couldn't help but take it all in. I'm Evelyn Walker, 33 years old, a research director at a pharmaceutical company earning $160,000 a year, living alone in Chicago. I'd steadily built my assets through careful investments. Money was important, but dignity? Dignity was priceless. My grandfather's words echoed in my mind. Become someone who can stand on their own feet. He's a successful businessman who made his fortune in construction. Everything I know about financial management, I learned from him. He's the only one in the family who truly understands me. Then there's my sister, Tiffany, a former flight attendant turned full-time housewife living an affluent life with her husband and 7-year-old daughter. But the truth is, this lifestyle wouldn't be possible without my grandfather's monthly support. Their high mortgage, car loans, their daughter's private school tuition, everything is covered by grandfather's assistance. Meanwhile, Tiffany's social media is flooded with images of designer bags, dinners at expensive restaurants, and luxurious vacations. She's obsessed with portraying a life that's far removed from reality. My parents, George and Barbara, are no different. They appear to enjoy a comfortable retirement in Florida, but that, too, is unsustainable without grandfather's help. Their retirement fund, their upscale retirement home, everything is contingent on him. Throughout my life, my parents have been distant, cold toward me, but indulgent toward Tiffany. It's been that way since childhood. I worked through college, covering my tuition with scholarships and earning living expenses through part-time jobs. Meanwhile, Tiffany relied completely on our parents for everything from study abroad expenses to living costs. The disparity between us has always stung, a reminder of how different our paths were. Become someone who can stand on their own feet. That was another of grandfather's sayings. I've lived by those words, pouring everything I had into my career and financial independence. I built my life from the ground up working in the pharmaceutical industry, growing my assets through careful investments, and creating a life that needed no one's support. The high-rise apartment overlooking Chicago's skyline? It was earned through my own effort. Moderate luxury within my means, that's the life I've chosen. Still, as I lifted my suitcase, the anxiety about this year's Thanksgiving trip tightened in my chest. Every year, the fractures in our family's relationships seemed to grow deeper. My sister's competition for appearances, my parents' biased affection, and my grandfather's worried gaze. In the taxi heading to the airport, I reflected on this year's trip. The Breakers, an exclusive 5-star hotel established in 1896, with Italian Renaissance architecture and luxurious suites that cost upwards of $800 per night. The Thanksgiving dinner alone was rumored to cost $200 per person. Despite the luxurious setting, our family's reality was fragile and distorted. Tiffany's expensive lifestyle, my parents' comfortable retirement, all were built on the shifting sand of grandfather's support. And this year, I felt that fragile reality was finally reaching its breaking point. Everyone must have noticed, but no one dared to address the truth that loomed over us. As the taxi made its way from Palm Beach International Airport to the Breakers, Florida's gentle sunlight streamed through the windows. The Thanksgiving Day weather was perfect, bright, warm, and inviting. I arrived at the luxury resort, the last to check in. Pulling my navy Rimowa suitcase, I stepped into the magnificent building, its Italian Renaissance design awe-inspiring. My theory dress had slightly wrinkled during the long flight, but it still conveyed my understated elegance. The lobby was pristine, dignified. Above me, sparkling chandeliers hung, casting soft light over the polished marble floor. Footsteps echoed gently across the vast space, while other guests were already enjoying their Thanksgiving afternoon in their own ways. On my way to the front desk, I spotted my parents. They appeared to be discussing something in a secluded area of the lobby. Mother was wearing what looked like a new resort dress, while father was dressed casually, appropriate for his age. When our eyes met, they quickly looked away. "Miss Walker, I apologize, but I cannot find your reservation." The front desk staff's voice was apologetic. They kept checking the screen repeatedly, unable to hide their confusion. "I can see the reservations for your family members, but—" At that moment, the sound of expensive heels approached. I turned to see Tiffany walking toward us with a triumphant expression, an Hermes Birkin bag on her arm and a Cartier watch gleaming. "Oh, Evelyn finally made it!" Her voice carried deliberate sarcasm. The front desk staff continued checking the system. Other guests' attention began to turn toward us. "How strange that there's no reservation!" Tiffany's voice rose in volume, calculated to draw attention from those around us. Her Louis Vuitton suitcase stood out conspicuously next to my navy case. "Actually," Tiffany stepped closer, wearing a victorious smile, "I only made reservations for our family." Her words echoed throughout the lobby with a mocking expression. She continued, "A room for me, my husband, and daughter, and one for Mom and Dad, just for the real family, you see?" A moment of silence fell. The front desk staff was speechless, and our parents turned their backs even further away. The air around me felt frozen. In an instant, taking a slow, deep breath, I said without changing my expression, "I see. Then I'll leave." My voice came out calmer than I expected. Readjusting my grip on the suitcase handle, I politely nodded to the front desk staff. Taking out my smartphone, I opened the taxi-hailing app. "Wait!" Tiffany's voice rose slightly, but I was already preparing to leave the lobby. Feeling the sympathetic gaze of the front desk staff, I started walking toward the entrance. My sister, though caught off guard by this unexpected development, maintained her triumphant expression. Our parents stood awkwardly, frozen in place. Only the sound of my footsteps echoed through the silent lobby. The afternoon sunlight streaming through the main entrance felt oddly bright. While waiting for the taxi, palm trees swayed in the pleasant breeze. The Thanksgiving holiday I was supposed to spend at this luxury resort had ended in just a few minutes. Yet, in this moment, a strange sense of liberation spread through my heart. Grandfather's words resurfaced again. "Become someone who can stand on their own feet." Now I felt I understood the true meaning of those words. During the few minutes waiting for the taxi, I gazed at the hotel's magnificent exterior. The Adam-style architecture told a story of over 100 years of history, decorated lavishly for Thanksgiving celebrations. Luxury cars kept arriving with well-dressed families stepping out. Through the lobby glass, I could see my niece, Lily, wearing an expensive dress unsuitable for a 7-year-old. She was fidgeting behind her mother. Perhaps she was looking for me. Every Thanksgiving, it had been my tradition to bring her a present. This year, I had prepared a pearl hair clip. It was still beautifully wrapped in my suitcase. As I got into the arrived taxi, I told the driver to Palm Beach International Airport. On my smartphone, I was already searching for the next available flight to Chicago. Though airfares are expensive during Thanksgiving, that didn't bother me at all. Rather, the emotional energy I'd wasted every year during this season seemed far more costly. Through the rearview mirror, the Breakers building grew smaller. Its form, gleaming in the afternoon sun, seemed to symbolize our family's superficial glamour. And now, the first crack had appeared in that facade. I couldn't predict what would happen next, but one thing was certain: there was no going back. The taxi's interior provided a quiet space, shielded from the outside clamor. The air conditioning maintained a comfortable coolness, and the premium leather seats gradually eased the tension from earlier. Outside the window, Palm Beach's distinctive resort scenery flowed past. Neatly lined palm trees, white luxury homes, and occasional glimpses of the Atlantic's sparkling surface. Views that would normally captivate me now felt strangely distant. I took out my smartphone and dialed my grandfather's number without hesitation. The ringtone before he answered seemed longer than usual. "Evelyn, what's wrong?" Grandfather's voice carried its usual composure. "I have something to report," I began, speaking in a matter-of-fact tone. I conveyed the events at the hotel without emotion, just the facts. The missing reservation for me alone, Tiffany's words, and how I left. I explained everything chronologically. On the other end of the line, I could hear Grandfather's breathing become slightly rough. I could tell he was controlling his anger. However, I didn't add any words seeking sympathy. "I understand. I'll handle this from here." Grandfather's voice was low and heavy. In these brief words lay a premonition of what was to come. Shortly after hanging up, the incoming calls began flooding in. First, from Tiffany, over 10 missed calls registered within 15 minutes. "Evelyn, Lily wants to see you. She was looking forward to our annual Thanksgiving. Can't you think about a child's feelings? My friends are coming for dinner tonight. I was planning to post a perfect family Thanksgiving on Instagram. Do you know how embarrassing it is to explain this situation?" Tiffany's voice grew increasingly hysterical. Between the constant calls, the emails from my parents started arriving. We could have added another room, but as Tiffany said, we prioritized the real family. "You're independent now, aren't you?" My mother's words dripped with years of coldness. "If you can afford it, why not get another room with your salary? It shouldn't be a big deal. Why are you being so emotional?" The next email was even more spiteful, detailing petty calculations. Father's email was even more heartless. "Tiffany has a family, a husband and child. You understand, right? Can't you just quietly put up with it for Thanksgiving? That's always been your problem, only thinking about yourself, never considering the family." Mother continued, her tone painting me as the villain. "We had everything planned for social media posts. We were supposed to take lovely photos of you and Lily. It's all ruined now." Each message tightened the knot in my chest, but I knew these words too well. They had been a part of my life since childhood, a consistent undercurrent of discrimination. As the taxi neared the airport, another wave of messages arrived. "Because of your selfishness, Lily is crying. She had been waiting so long to see her aunt." My sister, once again, wielding her daughter as a shield until the very end. Beneath it, all I could see was vanity and pride. More emails from Mother. "Poor Tiffany. If you knew how desperate she is about Lily's future, you wouldn't understand, but children's education requires money." And yet, in this moment, I felt no need to reply. If anything, I felt a strange sense of gratitude that they had shown their true colors so clearly. Just before arriving at the airport, an email arrived from Grandfather. "I'm proud of your decision. I understand everything." At these words, my eyes briefly welled up, but not with sadness. Instead, it was a quiet determination, a silent marker of the beginning of a new chapter. My phone buzzed incessantly, calls from my sister demanding, "Answer the phone right now," and emails from my parents accusing, "Your selfishness is tearing the family apart." But I had reached a point where no one's voice could reach me. I stepped out of the taxi and made my way to the international terminal. As I booked my flight to Chicago, a strange sense of liberation washed over me. This was the moment of being freed from the false, real family. 30 minutes after I boarded the plane to Chicago, a new email arrived from Grandfather. It was addressed to all family members. "The following is my final decision to be announced," it began in his characteristic dignified style. "Today, on Thanksgiving, an incident occurred that severely damaged our family's dignity. The cruel treatment of Evelyn is an injury to the Walker family name and cannot be tolerated under any circumstances. Effective immediately, I am freezing all financial support to George, Barbara, and Tiffany. I must remind you that your luxurious lifestyles are entirely dependent on my support. Those who have lost sight of family's essence, drowning in vanity and pretense, no longer qualify for such privilege." As I finished reading, the calls from my sister began pouring in. Her panic was evident, with each call more frantic than the last. "Evelyn, please answer the phone! Convince Grandpa!" The voicemail messages recorded her voice, full of desperation. It was clear that her life would unravel without the monthly payments. Grandfather's $30,000 had funded all her living expenses. Emails from our parents flooded in as well. Their previous arrogance was gone, replaced with frantic pleading. "Evelyn, this is about our retirement. Could you please talk to your grandfather again?" Again, the $150,000 deposit for their reserved luxury retirement home would be lost, and their medical insurance subsidies would be cut off. They were panicking, watching their retirement security crumble before their eyes. "Do something. He'll listen if it's you, won't he?" Mother's email contained words I had never expected. Apology. "I'm sorry for saying such terrible things earlier, but this is a family crisis." But even as their words poured in, I knew that this was no longer my problem. I had long ago outgrown their expectations, their demands, their version of family. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't going to be the one to fix it. I quietly turned off my smartphone. A vast sea of clouds spread outside the window. The perfect family Thanksgiving photos that had been posted on social media every year would not be uploaded this year. For Tiffany, that might be an even bigger blow than the financial impact. The plane was heading steadily toward Chicago without turbulence. The passenger next to me seemed to be contemplating Thanksgiving dinner preparations, browsing recipes on their smartphone. Normally, at this time, I would have been giving Lily her present in the hotel lounge. After landing, when I connected to my home Wi-Fi in Chicago, there were over 100 unread messages. Most were from my sister, their content becoming increasingly frantic. "What am I supposed to do? I won't be able to pay the loans. What about Lily's school fees?" Emails from our parents had also grown more serious. "We might not be able to get the retirement home deposit back. What are we supposed to do now? I can't sleep at night thinking about the medical insurance." However, what drew the most attention was grandfather's final notice sent to all family members. "This measure is irreversible. Consider it the consequence of your own actions. Any objection to my decision will result in the termination of all remaining support." I calmly read through the incoming messages. Their formerly arrogant attitude had completely changed to desperate pleas. Never before had each family member's true nature been so clearly revealed. Setting down my smartphone, I brewed tea in the kitchen. By now, I would normally have been enjoying the hotel's luxurious dinner, a Thanksgiving special course worth $200 per person. Remembering that amount made me smile slightly. Every year, my sister's family had posted about this lavish dinner on social media, yet in reality, they had been struggling even to make monthly credit card payments. A new call came in, this time from my sister's husband. Mixed with panic and confusion were words criticizing his wife's spending habits. It seemed cracks were beginning to appear in their marriage as well. More specific pleas arrived from our parents. "The retirement home won't refund the $150,000 advance payment. Medical insurance will be self-paid from next month. Because of you, our retirement." Following those words was a repetition of defending my sister and criticizing me. It was as if they hadn't learned anything. I took a lemon from the refrigerator and added it to my tea. Tomorrow, I would return to work as usual. New research data analysis awaited in the pharmaceutical company project. 160,000 annual salary, steadily accumulated investment trusts, a stable life foundation built by my own efforts. Outside the window, Chicago's night view quietly sparkled. The lights of the high-rise buildings were like stars. Suddenly, I remembered my own credit card statement. Full payment every month. Moderate luxury within my means. No debt. Grandfather's favorite saying came back to me. "Vanity is for others, savings are for yourself." In this city, I had carved out my life through my own efforts. As grandfather said, I had become someone who can stand on their own feet, and now I deeply felt that choice had been the right one. From my smartphone, incoming calls continued to ring, but they were voices that would no longer reach me. 2 weeks after Thanksgiving, in early December, Chicago was blanketed in its first snow. Days were spent immersed in new projects at the pharmaceutical company's laboratory. Amidst the unchanging daily routine, my family's situation had undergone dramatic changes. The changes were first noticeable on social media. My sister's Instagram, which had been updated almost daily, had suddenly fallen silent. Her last post was from the day before Thanksgiving, a photo of her Hermes bag at an upscale restaurant tagged with #dream lifestyle. The comment saying, "What a wonderful life," in now seemed painfully ironic. Emails from my father finally showed a hint of genuine remorse. "I'm reflecting on our years of extravagant living. We spoiled Tiffany too much, and we were cold to you. I'm sorry." Similar messages arrived from my mother. With their medical insurance subsidies cut off, they're finally realizing the true cost of healthcare. "Our pension alone isn't nearly enough. I finally understand how luxuriously we were living." Tiffany's situation had become even more dire. I received an unexpected call from her husband, his voice thick with exhaustion. "I've discovered hidden debts she kept secret. I'm shocked by the credit card bills. We can't maintain this lifestyle anymore." With grandfather's support suddenly cut off, their facade of affluence is crumbling. "We're considering moving to a cheaper house and looking at public schools for Lily. Tiffany cries every night." The sound of his voice, weary and resigned, made it clear their marriage was in crisis too. In contrast, my life remained steady. I arrived at work at 8 a.m. and returned home at 6 p.m. Weekends were spent attending investment study groups, reviewing my savings management, and living within my means. Just yesterday, I was promoted to team leader for a new research project, with a salary increase on the horizon. My investment trust operations were going well, and I had no concerns about the future. Vanity brings momentary satisfaction. Savings bring lifelong peace of mind. My grandfather's words had become more resonant than ever, not just for me, but for the whole family. While my parents fretted about retirement and security, and my sister struggled with debt, I continued living my ordinary life with quiet contentment. Over the last 2 weeks, the frequency of emails and calls from my family had decreased significantly. What began as daily, desperate contacts had dwindled to once or twice a week. Their tone shifted toward resignation. "Lily will be transferring to public school. She'll take the school bus." My sister's latest email hinted at acceptance of reality. The dream private school life she had once flaunted on social media would never be posted again. Our parents, too, were considering a move from their luxury Florida community to an affordable condominium, struggling with mounting medical bills. Their dream of a lavish retirement had crumbled. "We've been living with the wrong values for years," my father wrote in his most recent email. Whether this realization would spark the restoration of genuine family bonds remained uncertain. Last week, I received a brief message from grandfather. "Awakening to the truth of life sometimes brings pain, but it's necessary pain. Your decision gave them an important lesson." I didn't respond. I simply saved the email and moved on. In the cold, clear winter sky of Chicago, new stars twinkled. 3 months after that Thanksgiving, early signs of spring began to show in Chicago. My life had remained unchanged, or rather, it had become even more fulfilling. The pharmaceutical project was progressing smoothly, and last week I received notice of a promotion. As research director, my achievements were being recognized, and my salary was set to increase to $200,000. The investment trust was flourishing, with assets steadily growing. From my office window, I looked out over the vast expanse of Lake Michigan. The sunlight glinted off the waves, bringing a quiet sense of hope. New research data sat on my desk, and I felt a deep contentment in the work I did. Time spent immersed in my projects had become my most precious time. Recently, a birthday gift arrived from grandfather, a simple pearl necklace. The attached card, in his familiar, elegant handwriting, read, "True brilliance dwells in those who stand on their own feet." I had begun maintaining minimal contact with my parents. They had moved from their upscale Florida community to a more affordable condominium, grappling with medical bill payments. It seemed they were gradually adjusting to the reality they had long ignored. Luxury brought fleeting joy, but security was grounded in simplicity. My mother's latest email contained genuine understanding for the first time. Tiffany's family had also moved to a suburban neighborhood. Lily had started attending public school and was adjusting to the school bus. Tiffany's social media remained inactive. "How empty it all seems now, posting just to keep up appearances," read one rare email from my sister. reflecting on the reality of struggling with debt. Though their marriage was still strained, at least they had stopped denying reality. I had begun setting new goals. I wanted to make further strides in pharmaceutical research and eventually lead my own team. I hoped to pass on my knowledge to young researchers. On weekends, I attended study groups on investment and economics. The people I met in those circles lived grounded, practical lives, and the conversations were sincere, free from pretense or vanity. It was refreshing. The Thanksgiving incident had left each family member with an important lesson: the significance of financial independence, the emptiness of a pretentious lifestyle, and, above all, the true meaning of family. Grandfather's final words still resonated deeply within me. Real bonds can only be born after overcoming hardship. In my desk drawer, the pearl hair clip I had prepared for Lily's birthday still sat, beautifully wrapped. Someday, when she understands the value of standing on her own feet, when she no longer chases social media approval, perhaps that will be the right time to give it to her. Outside my window, the early spring winds rustled through the street trees as if heralding the start of a new season. What do you do when the family you've worked so hard to support and stay connected to finally shows their true colors? Do you keep sacrificing, or do you stand firm and walk away? For Evelyn, that moment came on Thanksgiving Day. After years of being the successful, independent one in a family that thrived off her grandfather's financial support, she had had enough. The final straw was the humiliation at the Breakers Hotel, her sister's deliberate exclusion, her parents' silent complicity, and the family's toxic dependence on their grandfather. Despite the wealth and luxury they flaunted, it was all built on a fragile foundation that could crumble at any moment. Evelyn could have swallowed her pride and stayed for the sake of appearances, but instead, she chose to walk away. She didn't need their approval, their false family unity, or their superficial social media posts. She had built her life from the ground up, and she was finally seeing the consequences of their actions clearly. When Evelyn's grandfather stepped in, freezing all financial support, it became evident that their world was crumbling without her. Tiffany's social media was no longer filled with lavish vacations and designer bags, and her parents began facing the harsh reality of their financial instability. In contrast, Evelyn remained steady, with a thriving career and the clarity that came with standing on her own feet. So what about you? Have you ever had to make the hard decision to walk away from family drama? Do you think Evelyn was right to cut ties, or should she have done more to help them? Let's talk about it in the comments. And if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more.